It's quite amazing when you're in political life and you have years going back where you'll say something and then weeks, months, years later, you'll say something else which completely and utterly flies in the face of what you originally stated. And anybody within public life, you end up with a paper trail. You'll find everything. There's everything out there. And, some of the stuff that they're uncovering about what Starmer has actually done or what Starmer's actually said or failed to promise in the past is really quite mind-boggling. Now, one of the early areas where I decided he wasn't a bit of me was he was one of the politicians, along with others, saying that the Brexit referendum would be honoured, the result would be honoured, no problem. And then he became one of those politicians that did everything in his power to subvert that, turn it around. And it's not the only thing either. I want to play this piece of video to you, which is quite an eye-opener. And what it will show you is exactly what he said at one point and then later on down the line. And it records it quite expertly.
We've had a referendum. We shouldn't have another referendum on the same issue. Whatever the outcome, there's got to be a referendum. Remain should be an option, and the Labour Party will campaign for Remain. We have left the EU. There's no case of going back to the EU. I oppose HS2, on cost and on merit. Every Labour leader since then, including me, I took over in 2018, has supported HS2. We do.
There you go. So there's two examples there straight away on Brexit and HS2, a couple of years apart, where he thinks no one will remember. He turns around and, look at that confident look at the camera.
Support it. I'm not going to rank Jeremy Corbyn. He's a colleague, he's a friend, and he's led us through some really difficult times in the Labour Party.
He was never a friend.
No, not in the sense that we were, went to visit each other or anything like that. Trans rights are human rights, and I support the right to self-identification. We don't think that self-identification is the right way forward. I don't think you can simply do away with any assessment. And those assessments are appalling. And I would scrap them, just like Becky would. Scrap the assessments, scrap the sanctions, scrap the universal credit. Freedom of movement will have to end as we leave the EU. We have to make the case for freedom of movement. And we have to make it strongly. Freedom of movement has gone and it's not coming back.
Quite damning, all of those, well, effectively you could call them U-turns all on themselves, where he's said something, obviously the political narrative at the time, and gone back on it later on, and quite spectacularly so in some cases. It's unbelievable. The only thing I will say in his defence, he's not the only one guilty of this, but he is the Prime Minister, and you need to see what's going on. The next thing I want to show you is this here. This is another tweet by somebody called Daniel, and he's taken the trouble to make a list of all the U-turns that have happened. So let's go through this. Starmer hasn't even been in power 2 years, and off the top of my head, he's had the following scandals, stroke U-turns. The freebie scandal. You remember that with the glasses and the hospitality? I certainly do. U-turned on Island of Strangers, language that he used. That's when he was referring to Britain. Grooming gangs inquiry U-turn. We're still waiting for a inquiry, an official inquiry, and look at the progress Rupert Lowe's made on his. Unbelievable. Mandelson appointment and firing. Mandelson Epstein files. 2-child benefit cap U-turn. Farmers inheritance tax U-turn. I was up at one of the demonstrations for that as well. Winter fuel allowance U-turn. Compulsory digital ID U-turn. Chagos mess. Budget tax rise promise U-turn. Business rates for pubs U-turn. Burnham being blocked. Mind you, that's a good thing. damaging special relationship like no other prime minister. That situation at the end there with the special relationship, that's more complicated, I think, than other people really are led to believe. You need to look into that a lot more. What a mess. The most politically tone-deaf UK government ever. And that's saying something. And you look at this, well, very short time they've been in office. It's really incredible. Now, as I've said before, what you have is a situation where party politicians will quite literally play party politics with all of this. And if their very survival is dependent on somebody going, then they will, by hook or by crook, make that happen. I want to play you this video here, and this came out
few days, and I am clear that I have to do what's right for my country, Scotland. This isn't easy, and it's not without pain, as I have a genuine friendship with Keir Starmer. But my first priority and my first loyalty is to my country, Scotland. And I am not willing to sacrifice Scotland's NHS, our schools, our communities, our towns, cities, villages and islands to a third decade of an SNP government. That's why the distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change. It is so obvious that we desperately need change in Scotland. And in 3 months' time, the opportunity to get rid of a failing SNP government is one that is too important to be missed. We cannot allow the failures at the heart of Downing Street to mean the failures continue here in Scotland. Because the election in May is not without consequence for the lives of Scots. We have an NHS crisis where too many Scots can't access the treatment they need and when they need it. We have a housing emergency with more than 10,000 Scottish children homeless right now. And we have too many young people not feeling safe at school or on our streets or missing out on the opportunities they deserve. And we have an SNP government that is addicted to secrecy and cover-ups with devastating consequences. That's why I have to be honest about failure wherever I see it. The situation in Downing Street is not good enough. There have been too many mistakes. They promised they were going to be different, but too much has happened. Have there been good things? Of course there have, many of them, but no one knows them and no one can hear them because they're being drowned out. That's why it cannot continue. I am proud to have played my part in removing a Tory government that was doing so much damage to Scotland. And having a Labour government matters. I am proud of my Scottish Labour MPs who did the hard work, persuaded our fellow Scots, ran a historic and successful campaign, and who have spent every day since fighting for Scotland's interests. I'm proud of these Scottish Labour ministers serving at every level of government, delivering for Scotland. I want them to stay in government because I said right at the start that my first priority and my first loyalty is to my country, Scotland. That's why they must continue to defend and protect Scotland's interests. Keir Starmer is a decent man, and it is no secret that I've always got on well with him, and he has dedicated his life to public service. I have also dedicated myself to public service, and I need to decide what I'm willing to accept and what I'm willing to tolerate. The people of this great country, Scotland, are crying out for competent government, for transparency, for honesty, and for delivery. They want to see politics that is open and accountable. They want to see leaders who put the national interest before themselves. That is the standard I will always apply. In 3 months, we have an election that must be about one thing and one thing only: Scotland. That is my duty. That is my priority. That is my loyalty. And that is Scotland.
There you go. So that's somebody in Scotland effectively saying, Starmer, sling your hook. And there's been resignations as well. You know, they're all closing in. And what do we have in the news today? He's not going to resign. He's going to get on with the job at hand. Well, he's completely fucked it up, in my view, and many others too. And what, of course, happens to this country when people have got to the point and they think, well, hang on, what's going on here? Does trouble start? Do people start asking questions? There's a very interesting piece here I want to show you, which is with Carl Benjamin. And I'll read the tweet first and then we'll have a look at the video. So Carl Benjamin says, UK could be heading for sectarian violence. I can't remember a time the government has been so weak. This is a Muslim area. What you have to understand as well, and I will play that video in just a second, is that those in power would actually benefit very much if there was some kind of altercation, because then what that would allow them to do would be to rewrite our constitution in a convention parliament. Think about why a convention parliament's called in the first place, and what would happen then, of course, you would lose all of your rights. Everything would be rewritten. And I'm talking inalienable rights that technically I can't take off you. So we're being played like an old fiddle in a band. Let's have a listen to this.
Don't think about these things, they'll creep up on us when we're least prepared, because I can't remember a time where the government has been so weak. I can't remember when the opposition to the government outside of politics, outside of Westminster politics, has been so strong. And I can only imagine that there have been conversations in Westminster that have asked the question, how many men do you think Tommy Robinson could raise if he wanted? And how many men do you think the Parliament could raise if they wanted? I think they've come to these calculations of who's fighting for Keir Starmer. The answer is nobody. Now, obviously, like I said, I don't know anything like that's happened, but I'm sure that they're aware.
There's another calculation, isn't there? How many people armed with baseball bats could significant sections of Muslim England raise?
They showed us this during Southport riots, where you saw them get the Muslim community out in the streets with baseball bats and police put them away.
Or indeed the marches through London.
And so we are arriving at a point where conflicts of interests, of claims to the country are being made, and a lot of bad blood has been built up between these.
This is a Muslim area.
This is,
and that, I'm afraid, isn't England, is it? That's Northern Ireland.
yes.
That is exactly what Belfast looks like, and the old parts of Belfast that were fought over between Protestants and Catholics. I mean, I was there last year. The thing that struck me was a new multiplication of flags. So clearly, in the old Protestant areas, everywhere there is the Union Jack. In the Irish Republican areas, the Irish tricolour. Now, in the there's a new flag, well, there are two new flags. There is the Israel flag in the Protestant areas, and there's the Palestinian flag, or various forms of the black flag of Islam, black and white flag of Islam in Republican areas. And that Northern Irelandization is a fate too horrible to contemplate.
That's big trouble all round, isn't it? I mean, it says not England, but England has got big trouble too. And, you know, we're all supposed to be protected by this common law constitutional area. And we're not. We're not. Let me know what you think. As always, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share my stuff. I'll talk to you soon. Toodaloo.